to Vixen, Black Beauty and Pop Culture. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. I am so excited for today's episode, y'all. I can't even explain. This is one that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I just never got around to it. So I'm really excited to share it with you guys today. I'm so excited that it's a part of this new era of Vixen, and we're going to go ahead and get into one of the most iconic Black magazines ever, one of the most iconic pages in Black media history. It's just... y'all know what I'm talking about because y'all can see the title, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. But before I do, I just want to say happy Black History Month, y'all. Happy Black History Month. In the words of the late, great Whitney Houston.
It's February. It's Black History Month. What does that mean to you guys?
Excuse me?
Black History Month.
We need a longer month.
I hope you guys have a very peaceful, very restful, and a very exciting Black History Month. Also, happy Valentine's Day to my gals and my guys. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody because the podcast is monthly. I won't talk to y'all again until March, so I'm going to miss those things. So I just wanted to say happy Black History Month and happy Valentine's Day. And let's go ahead and get into it. There are certain magazines, certain TV channels and TV shows that are just synonymous with Blackness. Like when you think about the magazines you grew up with, whether you read them yourself or not, you're probably going to think of a few names. And I'm pretty sure within that list of names, Ebony, Sister to Sister, Essence, and Jet Magazine are going to be included. The Johnson Publishing Company was the home of Ebony Magazine, which launched in 1945. So Ebony was aspirational. It was the pinnacle of Black excellence. The pages were filled with successful Black people from all walks of life. So think entertainers, politicians, doctors, well-to-do families, you name it. If it was Black excellence, it was in Ebony. So Ebony was a huge success, but Johnson Publishing wanted to do something a little more fast-paced and a little bit more on the pulse. So they were looking to cover more current events, more current news, and keep people updated. So John H. Johnson, the company's founder, called the new publication Jet because he wanted the name to symbolize Black and speed. Thus, Jet Magazine was born. So the first issue of Jet went into print on November 1st, 1951, and was sold for 15 cents. Within the pages, Johnson wrote, "In the world today, everything is moving along at a faster clip. There is more news and far less time to read it." That is so true. So because of that, that is why Jet was weekly for one. That's why it was smaller. It was easier to digest. You could read it really quickly. You could read it during breakfast. You could read it during your commute and you'd be done. You'd be up to date. Let's read some of the headlines on one of their first covers. So let's start with, 10 ways to get a mink coat. I need to read that. Is Billy Eckstein slipping? And why Negro suicides are increasing. Those are some of the titles. The way that Johnson Publishing intended it, I kind of explained this a little bit. Ebony and Jet had very different jobs, even though they came from the same house. So Jet is fast, it's weekly, it's immediate, it's meant to be in your hands right away. It's covering breaking news, it's talking about politics, it covered the civil rights movement, sports, celebrity gossip, and then just like everyday Black life as well, in a way that just felt very accessible, very normal, right? Ebony was like your coffee table magazine that you flip through casually on the weekend. Jet was the one that you would grab during your weekday to quickly get up to speed on whatever was going on around you. After its inception, Jet became a staple in Black households across the country, becoming known as the weekly Negro news magazine. And it wasn't just entertainment, it was documenting real life. So like I said, they also covered the civil rights movement as it was unfolding, including the murder of Emmett Till. They covered the Montgomery bus boycott, and they also covered the work of Martin Luther King Jr. In a 2023 interview with Let It Be Known News, Jet president Daylon Goff said, "We had to be bold because you have that full ownership and understanding of the significance of that story." Jet was to the Emmett Till story what Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook Live was to George Floyd. It started a movement. It wasn't like little Black boys and men weren't getting killed in Mississippi in 1955. But when you saw it on those pages, you felt you had to do something. The same way when you saw on social media George Floyd's murder, you had to do something about it because it wasn't as if before that moment, Black men weren't getting killed by the police, end quote. Jet gave Black America a mirror, but it also forced the country to confront what was happening to Black people in the South. This cemented Jet as more than just a magazine. It was a real record of Black America. Here's another quote from a 2024 article from The New Yorker. I really like this article. It was called "The Unfiltered Charm of Jet's Beauties of the Week." I feel like it sums up Jet perfectly. Here it is. Jet was for Black people who wanted to look at other Black people. In fact, one of its best known rubrics was a listing of every time a Black character was going to appear on television week by week. And that was a real feature in the magazine. Y'all think it was towards the end, but every time a Black person was going to be on TV that week, because y'all know you had to have the TV guide. That's how we knew what was coming on before they digitalized everything. But yeah, it was a feature that would just tell you, like, there's a Black person in this. They would have their name, the show, the channel, I think, as well. I feel like that just sums up what Jet meant to Black people overall. And you know, as a record of Black life in America, they had to depict real Black women too. So that representation could be found on page 43. And y'all already know what I'm talking about. That page was the home of Jet's Beauty of the Week. It was the only page in color, while the rest of the magazine was black and white at the time.
I gotta ask this, as a model, did you ever think about, okay, Jet Beauty of the Week? I know I used to love putting them on my wall, but you ever think about being like a Jet Beauty of the Week?
Well, I have 3 brothers, and all my brothers put the Jet Beauty of the Weeks up. And so I couldn't imagine myself being on my brother's wall.
That would be kind of weird.
That would be weird. Yeah. But I definitely wanted to be one of those girls. Like, I wanted to be sexy and beautiful and gorgeous. And the
Well, it worked out for you.
Well, thank you. But the glamour was in Black beauty, I think, which is what was so great about, you know, the beauty of the week. It was the melanin and the beautiful skin and the curves. And so, yeah, I always wanted to be that girl.
Every issue featured a woman, usually in a simple studio setup or sometimes out on location. She was mostly in a swimsuit. Their photos were never over the top, never overproduced. Honestly, I would say, like, the photo shoots that we see on Instagram, like just regular people having birthday photo shoots. And listen, I love a birthday photo shoot, okay? I'm not shading the girls who do the birthday photo shoots, but I would say, like, a birthday photo shoot that we see on Instagram is probably a lot more produced and a lot more, like, made up than any Jet Beauty of the Week picture was. Just being honest. So next to the photo, there would be her name, her age, where she was from, maybe where she worked, a few hobbies of hers. Her measurements would also be included a lot of the times, but they stopped that around 1993. Y'all know people did not like that. So here's an example of the little paragraph next to one woman's picture. She was the Beauty of the Week in a 1954 issue. Taking time out from singing chores in the Harris Sisters trio, 18-year-old Beverly Harris of San Diego splashes in the warm water near a California beach. Youngest of the 3 singing sisters, talented Beverly enjoys vocalizing, but would like to put her 127-pound curvaceous figure to use as a professional model. Then they list her measurements. Let me tell y'all our girl Beverly's measurements. So she was 35, I guess that's bust. Yeah, 35 bust, 23 waist. Damn, Beverly. And then 36 hips. So some of the women that were featured, they were artists, they were students, nurses. Some of them worked a regular 9 to 5. Some were stay-at-home moms. So it was a lot of regular, everyday women. And then there were a lot of women as well that were trying to break into the entertainment business. So lots of pageant queens, models, singers, actresses. Literally everybody was represented from all different walks of life. The purpose was very simple. It was to showcase Black women from everywhere. This was stated in a 1997 issue of Jet that I found, and I love this quote. One of the most popular pages of Jet is no doubt the Beauty of the Week. Every issue of the magazine showcases one of the country's most beautiful, shapely, and radiant Nubian princesses. End quote. So with that, let's talk about the Jet look. So the best thing about the Jet look is that there really isn't a specific look, and I feel like that's why people loved Jet Beauty of the Week so much. So the women just really looked like they could be one of your older cousins, your fine auntie, your neighbor, like just they looked like women that you knew, right? And typically they did their own makeup and hair, they styled themselves. The pictures were unfiltered at first, but even as technology got better, they were never heavily airbrushed. It was all about capturing the women in their most natural yet confident state, I would say. And this is very similar to the criteria for the Playboy Club. So my very first episode of the podcast talks about the first Black woman to be the Playboy Bunny of the Month. She also worked at the club. Her name is Jennifer Jackson. So I know from the research for that episode that the Playboy Club, they preferred a very natural look too. I feel like white people call it the girl next door. We call it like around the way girl, if you know what I mean. Those two terms are very similar. Okay, so let's have a little fashion style beauty corner. Since we did that on the Blue Cantrell episode, we can do it here. So I'm gonna just flip through the book and just talk about some of the women's outfits and their hair and makeup and stuff like that. So the book has the photos of the women with their pictures. Some women have like their full description, some don't. It's just the name. Some women, there is no name. But there aren't any years for when this was shot. But I don't really mind that because I feel like I can kind of gauge when this photo was taken just by the women's style. So I guess I'm testing myself a little bit here. Okay, so first we're going to talk about Serena. Serena is from Charlotte, North Carolina. She's a 5'9" model, actress, and flight attendant. She is wearing a orange satin bikini. It's really, really cute. It looks good on her. She's holding something in her hands. I can't really see what it is. She has micro braids. They're very long. She's dark skinned. She's beautiful. She has light brown eyes. Her teeth are super, super white. I love this bikini. It's like a little hip hugger bikini. Then let's see. We have Miss Julie. Julie's fire. Julie is fire. Okay, Julie has on, she's like a brown skin, dark skin woman. She has on this bright yellow, it's kind of like green. What do they call this color? Chartreuse. She has on a chartreuse bikini. Oh, I forgot to say what year I thought it was for Serena. So back to Serena in orange. I think this picture is from like 2001. Somewhere in between 98 and 2001. But anyway, let me go back to Julie. So Julie in the chartreuse bikini, Julie has that bikini on and she's wearing this like very African inspired, tribal inspired necklace. I love that she wore that. It doesn't really make sense like with the bikini, but I like that she wore it. She has bangs. They look really cute on her. Her hair is kind of like in a long wavy bob. She's really, really, really pretty. She has on like this peach lipstick. My mom used to wear a lip like this, like a peachy red. And she has on eyeshadow to match. I kind of feel like the eyeshadow she's wearing, I feel like she just took the lip color and just put it up there. But that's the beauty of Jet, right? Like a lot of these women was just making it do what it do. They wasn't makeup artists and all of that. I do know some of these shoots had makeup artists, but I don't think all of them did. Let's see. Then we have Sheila. So Sheila, it might be Shalia. I feel like this is Shalia. Shalia also has on like an African tribal print necklace. Her smile is gorgeous. She has like the frosted eye. She's doing the frosted eyeshadow thing, but she's like brought it up into her brow. Her brows are very thin, fab. I love a thin brow. If you know me, I love a thin brow. She also has micro braids. She's wearing a white bikini. Now, like I said, she has on a tribal necklace, but it like her bikini also has like tribal accessories on it too, so it looks good. She's holding like this long sash in her hand. I feel like this photo is from like the Pan-Africanism era. I feel like Shalia definitely listens to neo soul. This is giving me like 2004. I could tell that Shalia likes Dwelle. I can tell. Oh, and then I forgot to say Julie. So Julie, I think Julie's picture is the 90s. Julie's picture looks like it's 94 to 99. Okay, let me pick somebody else and then we can move on. Roniquia. Hold on. Roniquia ate down, y'all. Let me tell y'all about Roniquia. I feel like Roniquia, she looks like she's from somewhere that is a hair capital. Roniquia has this very, very perfect bob. It's like a longer bob, like a shoulder length bob with a side part. Fire. I could tell she got her hair done that morning. She looks so good, y'all. I feel like Roniquia is either from Detroit or Atlanta just because of how perfect her hair is. She has on this red bikini. It is studded. Like it has these really big silver studs on it. It's really, really, really cute. And then she has on these like long tribal earrings that the tribal vibes were very heavy. She has on these long tribal earrings, but they do match the bikini. I feel like it's a weird choice. It's like studs, and then that it's like two different vibes. But I don't know who Roniquia was feeling. Roniquia was feeling like that bitch this day. So they match it. She's also wearing this like very crimson, deep red lip fire. Her teeth are super white, super straight. And this bob, now that I look at her bob, I don't know if this is the lighting. It looks like she has a touch of red in her bob. Roniquia is fab, y'all. I feel like this picture. Her body is very tea, by the way. This one's hard because her hair is giving me 90s, but the bikini is giving me like mid 2000s. I think that this picture, she reminds me, I have a aunt who has a hair salon. She reminds me of the pictures that my aunt used to have hanging up in her salon. And when I went there a lot, I was like 10, and I was 10 in 2003. So I'm going to say Roniquia's picture was taken somewhere in between 2002 and 2005. Okay, one more, just because this was fun. I'm trying to find one that I think would be hard, because there are some pictures in here that I can tell are very clearly from the 70s or very, very clearly from the 60s. I want to get tripped up by somebody. Okay, Michelle, period. I'm choosing Michelle because I have no idea when this picture was taken off first glance. Also, Michelle is not wearing a bikini. She's one of the only pictures that I've seen where the woman did not have a bikini on. She has on, you can't really tell what she has on because she's like bent over, like the pose. She's not bent over. I'm gonna have to post this one. Let me make a note to post this one on my Instagram so y'all can see what I'm talking about. I don't know how to describe her pose. She's kind of like lunging forward. You know that pose people do, track stars do before they take off running? She's kind of doing that, but in a sexy way. I don't know how to describe it. But Michelle is like lunging forward. She has on stockings. She has on black like stockings, sheer stockings. She's wearing these black high heels. They're very high. They're at least 4 inches. They have rhinestones all over them. She's also posing with her purse as well. Her purse is out. Michelle, I don't know why your purse is on the ground. But Michelle's purse is on the ground. She's posing with it. It matches her shoes. And she has on this like black, I can't tell if it's a dress or a robe because of the way she's posing. Her accessories are silver, but she is wearing gold. She has on gold studs. She's fire. Her face card never, ever, ever decline. She's wearing a very soft red lip. Soft red lip, I feel like off rip when I see this, it's a 90s look, but can't be too sure. She has on some eyeliner. It looks good. She's so pretty. Her brows are perfect. They're like thin but not too thin, so it's giving I don't know. Then she has the short cut. It's kind of like a perm curly cut. Super cute. It's perfect for her face. This picture is definitely from the 90s. I'm gonna give it like 98. I feel like that's a strong guess. But anyway, that was the end of Fashion Corner. I was trying to find a set of rules for being a Jet Beauty of the Week, or if there was certain criteria, and I really couldn't find anything other than the fact that you had to be 18 to 25 years old. I think they eventually changed it to just 18, at least 18, but you had to be 18 to 25 to start. And the women that were featured, they were either scouted by photographers or they submitted themselves. So, funny story, I was watching an interview on YouTube. Her name was Natasha Raisor. She was a Jet Beauty of the Week in, I believe, the 90s. And when she was talking about how she became one, she said that depending on where you were in LA, if someone scouted you, they most likely were trying to recruit you for porn. Like if you were in the San Fernando Valley, it was probably going to be for a porn film. If you were like in Hollywood and somebody asked if you were a model, they was probably trying to get you to escort. But she felt really comfortable when the person from Jet approached her because she was at Crenshaw Mall, so she knew that it was legit. I did find a blog that a model named Dania, Denise, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Dania Denise had a blog where she would just give modeling advice. She would talk about her experience, and she did write a blog about her experience shooting for Jet in 2004. So I'm going to go ahead and just read that to y'all. I actually got into the Jet gig while doing an unrelated project. I had just taken on a TV hosting project that was going to take me down to Los Angeles, where I was scheduled to co-host a pilot episode of a news show that was hoping to be picked up by a station. The person in charge of the project was a part-time photographer who had a lot of great connections within the industry. One of those connections happened to be photographer McLemore, a widely acclaimed photographer who has shot for Playboy, Ebony, Jet, People, Harper's Bazaar, among others. The plan was to kill two birds with one stone by combining the red carpet hosting event with a test shoot for Jet magazine. 3 other models were along for the road trip, and the plan was to head for Las Vegas first to test shoot with McLemore for Jet, and then go to LA for the hosting gig at the BET Awards show at the Kodak Theater. The shoot took place at LaMonte's very huge house, which had plenty of setups for photo shoots. We were asked to fill out the application for the magazine, which basically asked us for our measurements, contact information, and asked what our interests were. At the time, I wasn't using a model alias, so I used my legal name. We were hustled into hair and makeup, and then each took turns shooting in swimwear with LaMonte. I got to pose with a scooter as a prop and was shot against a white backdrop set up in the garage. My face kept melting off in the 100-degree weather, which called for plenty of powder and fanning. I also shot in front of a black gate that led to the front of the house. After about 30 to 45 minutes of shooting, I was done. After the trip, I returned back home. It was July, and I enjoyed the rest of my summer out of school. I was in college at the time. In October, I received a phone call from the photographer/director who hired me for the hosting gig and was told that LaMonte let him know that my photo had been chosen for one of Jet's upcoming November issues. Needless to say, I jumped for joy. I was so excited. When November came around, I received a package in the mail, which contained a check for $100, a letter congratulating me, and a free copy of the issue I appeared in. I wasn't thrilled about the picture they chose, but then again, it wasn't my decision to make, but I was thankful to have been chosen at all. I quickly went from store to store in my town, buying as many copies as I could. A few days later, I began receiving calls from family members all over the country. Apparently, they all subscribed to Jet magazine and didn't expect to see their niece, cousin, granddaughter in a swimsuit in their magazine. So for the girls who submitted themselves, they had to fill out the piece of paper that was in every issue of Jet, and it probably just like a little form, little contact form, and then they had to submit a current picture of themselves in a swimsuit, and if they liked your picture, they would connect you with a photographer, and you'd be in Jet. Speaking of photographers, one of their most iconic has to be McLemore. He shot over 500 women for Beauty of the Week, and his work was turned into a book. It's called Black is Beautiful, Jet Beauties of the Week. That book, y'all, I highly, highly recommend it. It was a great source for this episode, but if you're looking for a new coffee table book, it's so gorgeous. I'm definitely going to post some pictures from it on my Instagram. So shout out to LaMonte. LaMonte, he was originally a member of the Hi-Fis, and then he joined the Fifth Dimension. He freelanced for Jet. He did the Beauty of the Week feature for 40 years, actually over 40 years, and he did all of this while touring the world with his group, which is just so crazy. Fun fact about him, I learned this from the book. So he shot a woman named Lisa Starnes for a 1981 issue of Jet. He later had a relationship with Lisa, and they had a daughter, Sierra. He kept the swimsuit that Lisa wore in her Jet Beauty of the Week feature, and he shot Sierra in it too. And I love stuff like that. Stories like this is why I will be a hoarder for the rest of my life, because I just feel like that's such a flex. For you to do the same photo shoot that your mom did, be featured in Jet as well, wearing the same bathing suit, shot by your dad who's still living. I just feel like that's fire. I love that. Anyway, this is a quote from LaMonte, and this is from the Las Vegas Black Image. There's a soul-to-soul connection, a mutual respect, a trust factor as a photographer and what you share with a model. There may be laughs, even tears of emotion. I never oversnap a photo shoot. Again, I've always said, I just see things. And when I've seen enough, when eye to eye we can tell we've both felt enough, it's like hitting a home run. The feeling is indescribable and the bond lasts forever. For instance, like the bond I share with my dear friend Jane Kennedy. Then there are former Beauties of the Week who write me to this day on social media saying, my experience as a model for Beauty of the Week was transformative and pivotal in self-actualization, end quote. At its peak, Jet had millions of subscribers across America, and Beauty of the Week became just a weekly ritual. It was the page that you flip to first for a lot of people. I know I always looked at the Jet Beauty of the Week. In that interview with Let It Be Known News, Daylon Goff also said, everybody has a Jet story. When you hear Beauty of the Week, you don't even have to say Jet Beauty of the Week. It's cinemas. I get those conversations from both men and women at least 3 times a week. As the feature's popularity grew, they also developed the Jet calendar. So the calendar had nude photos and it was available. You could order it via mail order. You could order it. I think you could get that one in stores as well. I know when they eventually created like a swimsuit version of it, which was a little bit less risque, that one you were able to get in certain stores. You could order that one online. I think they changed it to swimsuit maybe in like the early 2000s, but for a while they did have the nude versions, which I think are pretty rare now. Like I don't think there's a lot of them out there, which is kind of interesting because if you look at like magazine resellers, I feel like there's a lot of Jet out there, just like the regular magazine, but I've never really seen any of the calendars, seen pictures, but never seen one just out and about in the wild. But they did develop a calendar, and then later they had the swimsuit version of the calendar in the early 2000s. But to my knowledge, the calendar sold out every year. Then once they switched over to swimsuit in the 2000s, they would hold castings for both calendars. So they had the Jet Beauty swimsuit calendar, and then they had the Jet Brothers swimsuit calendar. So that was for the guys. They would go to exotic locations and shoot for a week. I know they had a shoot in Cancun. They had a shoot in the Bahamas. They also had a 1-hour special on the making of the swimsuit calendar. I believe this came on TV1. I could not find it online. I would love to see it. If anybody can find it, send it to me. I want to watch it. But Latrina Blair, who was Jet's calendar project director and the promotions manager at Johnson at the time, she said this to Ad Age in 2008. We select a wide cross-section of models. Everyone has a different idea of what is attractive and what's sexy. I think we do an amazing job of filling the calendars with models that represent a variety of ideas of beauty. The models have different looks, different body types and skin tones, and they are all hot in their own way. Okay, so let's do a couple stats on popular magazines that existed at the same time as Jet. So of course we have Ebony. We also had Playboy, who I mentioned a little bit earlier. They didn't put a Black woman on the cover until 1971. Then you also have Vogue, who didn't have a Black woman on the cover until 1974. I don't think Life magazine had one until 1969. So with all of that happening in the landscape, for Jet to be a Black magazine putting Black women as the standard of beauty in 1951, that was huge. You know, people just, they weren't doing it like that at the time. So in that 2019 AndScape interview, former editor-in-chief Mira Lowe said, Jet helped with the penetration in the Black community. It laid the groundwork and was the pioneer to what we see in mainstream magazines today. So Jet was not Playboy by any means, but both magazines do exist in the same visual conversation, I would say. I think that in contrast to their peers, like a Players, trying to think, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Penthouse. They both walk the line of like that sexy yet tasteful thing, you know, like the girl next door, around the way girl, that kind of contrast. Like they kind of walk that line where the others kind of go a little bit in a different direction. So I think they have that in common, but they were different because the women that are featured as Jet Beauties of the Week, they're very opposite of what white pinup girl culture was looking like at that time. You know what I mean? They were showcasing was not what Jet was showcasing. The Jet women, they weren't stick thin or anything like that. Still fine, you know, still natural, but definitely not stick thin. One of my favorite things about magazines and just features like Jet Beauty of the Week is you can really see how beauty and fashion trends will shift before your eyes while you're looking at them. So you can really see that change with Jet, I think, especially because it was weekly and it's just been around for so long. So the early images, like the ones that you see from the 1960s, they're wearing more modest swimsuits, almost like a costume, if I'm being honest. Like not even the 60s, the ones from the 50s, they almost look like they're wearing a costume, right? And when they're wearing swimsuits, it's much more modest. It's kind of like mini shorts and a bra. And then you see more afros in 1970 issues, which makes sense because we had the Black is Beautiful era. By the 1980s, you start to see like a little bit more individuality in the women. You're seeing acrylics, you're seeing like costume jewelry, you're seeing colorful eyeshadow, the hair is getting bigger, bright lipstick. Then when you go to the 90s, I feel like the girls have more like not blowouts. I feel like they have like more pressing curls. You have like a little more muted makeup. They're doing like frosted eyeshadow, lip gloss. So it's really cool to just see like how the trends change as you look at issues from different decades. Also, the way the page itself, the way the feature itself looked has started to change too. So, for example, they stopped sharing the women's measurements around 1993. In the 80s, they started to add the title on the page. So it said Beauty of the Week, like at the top. They would also play around with like where that was throughout the 90s and 2000s. Sometimes it'd be at the bottom, on the side. Later on, I've seen issues where they've started to ask women, why do you want to be a Jet Beauty? What does being a Jet Beauty mean to you? Like they would ask more questions like that. They would experiment with the font. It was just like an overall shift in how everything was presented. And I really liked just thumbing through a couple of these over the past couple of weeks while I've been researching this episode and just like seeing the trends change. And then also like how the publication was changing alongside Black women. I just felt like it was something really beautiful about that. So that AndScape article that I mentioned, in that article, they cite a 2010 study. It's called Body Shape and Size Depictions of African American Women in Jet magazine. So the point of this study, it was to look at how Black women were portrayed in Jet over time. And it starts in the 1950s and then throughout the early 2000s. So keep in mind, looking at the 50s from the 2000s, look, I'm not talking about like just Black culture, pop culture, GP, whatever you want to call it. This is peak thin era, especially them early 2000s. But Black beauty ideals historically have been more fond of curves and fuller shapes. That's just how we are. And the researchers for this study, they wanted to see if that showed up in Jet's Beauty of the Week feature. And it did, to an extent though. So they did find that the women featured, they did get fuller over time. So they got a little curvier. And I do think that lines up with Black beauty standards as we even started to be even more accepting of curvier shapes. But they said that the proportions also shifted in ways that mirrored mainstream ideals too. So I just found this really interesting because I do feel like as a people, Black people, we've always loved curvy girls, but I do feel like our idea of who was curvy in the early 2000s and prior is very different to what we would call curvy now. Like a lot of these women that are in like the 60s issues of Jet definitely have like big butts, right? Like, but I don't know if we would call them like thick today. Do you guys know what I mean? I feel like this is a little hard to explain. I feel like I have to post on Instagram so you guys can see what I mean. But I feel like some of the women that may have been considered super shapely, like in the early days of Jet, I don't even know if we would call them curvy today because we're just seeing so much curve. And like the BBL era of everything, it's really interesting to see how beauty ideals just change. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the backlash that Jet received. So to be honest, and you guys are free to disagree with me, I don't really think there's a conversation about Black beauty standards, like if we're just looking at it as a whole, that can truly exist without you discussing colorism. I don't know if that's possible. So even though Jet was the first of its kind with the Beauty of the Week feature, it was not immune to criticism. And a lot of that criticism, especially in the early years, was that they favored light-skinned women and more Eurocentric features. So if you look at earlier issues of the magazine, you will notice that you're seeing more light-skinned Beauty of the Weeks, and you'll also see ads for skin bleaching creams very often. I mean, sometimes it's even several of them for different companies who sell bleaching creams, all in the same issue. So there was an issue. There was a problem, right? I did read a thesis by Jerrika M. Anderson Edwards. That thesis is called The Beauty Standard Trade-Off, How Ebony, Essence, and Jet Magazine Represent African American Black Female Beauty in Advertising. And let me just say this, before I reference this thesis, Jerrika, girl, you did your big one. Shout out to you because, listen, I'm going to break down the study that she did, y'all. So she looked at issues of Jet, she looked at issues of Ebony and issues of Essence, right? And she broke them down into 3 categories. I believe the years that she looked at 1968 issues of each magazine, 1988 issues of each magazine, and then 2008 issues of each magazine. So she got, across spanning time. So she broke them down into 3 categories. So there was hair, skin tone, and then body shape and size. She then broke those categories down further. So for hair, it was straight, kinky, curly. For skin tone, it was light, medium, dark. And then for body type, she had average and plus size. So Jerrika, I love you down. Thank you for this. This was really interesting. But anyway, so in her work, Jerrika found that for Jet, and I'm only going to talk about Jet specifically, Jet, throughout the issues for those 3 years I listed, light-skinned women appeared 541 times. Medium-skinned women, which I'm going to assume is going to be like brown skin, what we call brown skin. Brown-skinned women appeared 958 times. And then dark-skinned women appeared 287 times, y'all. So now let's look at just the dark-skinned women. So of the dark-skinned women who were pictured 287 times throughout those issues, only 33 of them were in 1968. 91 of them were in 1988. And then 163 of them were in 2008. So I feel like I don't have to say anything about that. Like, the numbers are there. That is a problem, right? And we know that this is not unique to Jet. This reflected a broader issue within Black media and in society at this time. And Jerrika's study, it really shows that over the decades, the feature did become more diverse in skin tone, in body type, and in hair texture. And it just moved forward as conversations moved forward, as representation moved forward and evolved. Jet also evolved with it. But I do think it's like insane. I kind of want to let me do the math really quick, y'all. Hold on. Where is my calculator? Let's do the math. So that means that 63% of the Black women that were pictured from the sample that Jerrika used, that was in 2008. That is over half. That's a lot. So that shows that there was a pretty big lack of representation for dark-skinned women. 2 things can be true at the same time, right? Like, Jet Beauty of the Week can be something that expands visibility at a time where Black women were erased across other platforms, but it can also reflect some of the same beauty standards that have been harmful to Black women at the same time, right? So I don't think, like I said, it's very hard to talk about Black beauty overall without colorism popping up, and that's a part of the history, and we got to talk about it. So we'll move on. Over the years, Jet also faced criticism for what some saw as the over-sexualization of Black women. Now, this was mostly because the women were photographed in bathing suits like 90% of the time, and also because their measurements were listed in the early days. So as the feminism movement grew legs and, there were more conversations being had about respectability and like the way women should carry themselves, critique of Jet Beauty of the Week just got much louder. And here's the thing. I think that beauty in general walks a very, very fine line. And there's just a lot of intersectionality there. Like, to some people, posing in your swimsuit is peak feminism. Like, that is feminism to them. But for others, being consumed by the male gaze in that way, that's setting us back. That's not feminism. So I don't know. It walks a fine line. And to really understand why Jet Beauty of the Week could be affirming to some and then disrespectful to others, you do have to think about the cultural context of this time. So our community was actively pushing back against a lot of racial violence, objectification, and sexual stereotyping. And a lot of this backlash came, I would say, like, it seems from my research, the 60s to about the 80s. Black women in particular had long been framed through those very racist myths that we all know that paint us as hypersexual or loose, as, some people would say. So while seeing Black women centered as beautiful can be powerful, seeing them primarily in swimsuits could also feel like a continuation of that same history, right? I'm going to read y'all a quote from a 2006 book by Robert Staples. It's really good. It's called Exploring Black Sexuality. The popular men's magazines, Playboy and Penthouse, refused to feature Black women in their pages. Although Playboy publisher Hugh Hefner donated money to the civil rights movement, advocated racial equality in his column, the Playboy centerfold remained lily white despite the pressures he faced to racially diversify until the 1970s. Of course, given the experience of Jane Kennedy, Black women may have preferred to be excluded. Kennedy was a fairly high-profile Black woman who was on the Dean Martin show and the NFL pregame show, and who appeared nude in the pages of Playboy magazine with her husband at the time. The Black community raised a firestorm of criticism at her for being an embarrassment to Black womanhood and contributing to the stereotypes of Black women as immoral. While almost every major white female actress has displayed some nudity in films and magazines, Blacks felt like one nude Black woman shamed the entire race, end quote. So, again, this is a complicated conversation, right? But I just feel like neither one is wrong because Black beauty in the media is just so complicated, and our feelings about the way in which we're represented are very, very complex. Like, for example, I posted a picture on the Vixen Instagram, which I thought was beautiful, but someone called it dehumanizing. And I thought that was a crazy reach. I laughed when I saw the comment, but there were people who agreed that that photo was dehumanizing. You know, a lot of people loved it too, but like, it's, you know, some people feel this way, some people feel another way. Also, in recent conversation, just the conversation that's happening about Tiana Taylor's character in y'all, I be calling that movie all types in it. I will call it One Day After the Next, One Day After Another, One Day at a Time. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The movie that she just won for. The conversation surrounding her character's like personality and the way she acted in that movie. Like, there are people who just like, I don't know. I feel like we are very sensitive about the way that we're represented, as we should be, right? Just as we should be because of our history. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a slippery slope. Like, this is a conversation that could definitely go on and on. But I do want to share a quote from Jerrika's study. So just brace yourself because it's long, but I feel like it kind of sums this up. An important part of how Black women have been viewed in America is how Black women have been represented by the mainstream, mostly white and male, media. Much like how theories of cultural hegemony and social constructionism explain who shapes our realities, Battle Walters uses Marx to argue that those who controlled the media also controlled how Black women were portrayed, and very rarely were these images positive or even logical. Images of Black women in this media do not represent them as they truly are, but as radicalized and gendered stereotypes, the two most common tropes being Mammy and Jezebel. Neither the Mammy nor the Jezebel characters are particularly beautiful or feminine women in terms of white American standards. Given the poor representation of Black women historically in mainstream media, it would seem safe to assume that Black representations were also denigrating, seeing as many Black people had brought into the idea of their inferiority. However, this was not the case. Rooks finds that when Black women were representing themselves in advertisements, there was no mention of how their hair texture, skin color, or body shape and size made them feel less worthy than their white equivalents. Black representations of Black women, unlike mainstream representations, presented images in which Black women were told that they were naturally defective. Instead, they marketed their products in ways in which suggested Black women could assert their identities independently of white society, but also of their African American male counterparts. End quote. Okay, so let's move on and talk about some women who are former Jet Beauties of the Week. So first of all, shout out to my best friend Dory. Her aunt, Auntie Leah, was a Jet Beauty of the Week. So shout out to Auntie Leah. A lot of the women who appeared in the magazine, they just did a fun photo shoot and then they went back to living their regular lives, which I feel like is a big part of the beauty of something like Beauty of the Week. But there were quite a few women whose careers were catapulted after they were a part of the feature. So one of those women is model, commentator, author, and playwright Janet Langhart Cohen. She first appeared in a 1966 issue. After meeting them at a beauty pageant in the 1960s, LaMonte actually shot both Marilyn McCoo and Florence LaRue for Jet Beauty of the Week, and they later joined his group, The Fifth Dimension. Cindy, who y'all may know as a member of En Vogue, she was a Jet Beauty of the Week as well in 1980. She also did pageants, I believe, as well. Claudia Jordan, she was a Jet Beauty of the Week in the 2000s. Also, Janae Dubois, aka Walona from Good Time, she was in a 1960 issue of Jet as the Beauty of the Week, RIP. Then, of course, we had Pam Grier as the Beauty of the Week in a 1971 issue. So, in an interview with AndScape in 2016, Pam said, "Did you see my baggy bikini? It wasn't even mine. I never had one. And they had me taking this picture. My hair wasn't done. I had on no makeup. I had no eyelashes on. And the bottom of the bikini was all baggy. I think it was just after I finished Black Mama, White Mama, and things were starting to blow up. And they said, you've got to do Jet and Ebony. You can see I am so rough. I just seemed not like the beauties of today, toned and tanned and shiny. I was ashy, no makeup. My hair was all over the place. I didn't even have polish on my toenails or fingernails. Come on." I'm weak, but she looked beautiful in that picture. But I feel like that quote, it shows like if you were a Black starlet, you were blowing up, like her people told her, you had to do Jet or Ebony or both. They told her to do both, and there's a reason for that, because it was, what were they calling it? The Negro Bible, the Black Bible. That is what Jet was. Y'all remember that quote I read from Exploring Black Sexuality that mentioned Jane Kennedy, who did the photo shoot with Playboy with her husband, and there was this big uproar from the Black community. I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole with that because I didn't want to get distracted while I was researching for this episode, but I had never heard of that, so I looked it up, and then I also saw that there was a sex tape incident involving Jane as well. I believe there was a private tape stolen from her home. So if you guys want a sex tape scandals themed episode on that, let me know. She is so interesting to me and very fab, so would love to do an episode on her. But yeah, just let me know if you guys want that. I believe she has a memoir. Either it's out or it isn't out yet, but let me know if that's something you guys want me to do. But anyway, I mentioned her because Jet was also a very big part of her success. So she was a Jet Beauty of the Week in 1971. She had appeared in the magazine in the 60s. She was on the cover because she'd won a big beauty pageant title. And she appeared in the magazine several times afterwards. And she wrote a really lovely essay in LaMonte McLemore's book. The title, again, Black is Beautiful, Jet Beauties of the Week. I will put it in my show notes. But she wrote a really nice essay in that book. I won't spoil it for you, but she does talk about how Jet put her on the living room table of nearly every Black home for years. And she was talking about how, people were confused by her fame. Like she was doing an interview, and he was like, how can you be so well known and so recognizable? You've never been on a hit TV show. You've never been in a hit movie. How? And she was just like, it was because of Jet. It was because of Jet magazine. And you know what that made me think of? You know how sometimes we call people Black famous? Like, it's people that we know that people of other races may not know, or we know them and people of other races may recognize them, but not know them as well. And Black famous is no shade at all. Black famous is just someone who went triple platinum in Black households, if you know what I mean. And I feel like right now there's just so much overlap between Black culture and pop culture, to the point where Black culture is just pop culture at this point. Like, why are little white kids talking about Unc? And why are they calling people who are 25 years old Unc? Why do they know who Natalie Nunn is? It's just a lot. And it's just, there's so much overlap, and it feels like it used to not be like that. Of course, there were some things about Black culture that were a part of pop culture, and pop culture was a part of everything. There were bits and pieces of everybody's culture that became pop culture, right? But it seems like right now, what we do is just what everybody does. And not to get off topic, because I could have a whole conversation about that, because that's essentially digital blackface, right? But anyway, back to being Black famous. It's just you could be deeply recognizable in Black households, and white America could probably not know who you are at all. Or they know they've seen you before, but they can't say where they know you from. I'm trying to think of people who I would consider Black famous. Let's see, Lavinio. I have no idea what Lavinio's real name is. I'm sorry, Lavinio. I have always just called him that. The actor who plays Lavinio is Black famous to me. Christian Keys is Black famous to me. Keith David, I feel like the last 15 years, he's like everybody famous, but he's always going to be Black famous to me. Loretta Devine is Black famous to me. I don't know if we have anybody like that now. I don't know. There's just so much overlap. So I don't think we're gatekeeping anyone in that way right now. Like whoever's famous to us is probably famous to everybody. But yeah, I love that Jane is able to say, Jet really was the launch pad for my career, and I'm so recognizable because of this tiny little magazine that, has 9 million subscribers and is printed every week. Fun fact, so she did a cover in the 1975 New Year's Eve issue of Jet, and that issue is in the National Museum of African American History. I love that. Okay, y'all, so here is your homework. I'm giving y'all homework. Do y'all think that something like Jet Beauty of the Week could exist again? And what is your honest opinion on that? Mine personally, I have mixed feelings because I feel like one could argue that doing like what I do could be a form of keeping like that alive, right? But I don't really think it could exist in that form again, but only because we don't really engage with like physical media at all anymore. So I do think some of the appeal would be gone because of that, and because we have Instagram. So it's like we got access to bad bitches from all over the world now, right? Just with a few finger strokes. You can open Instagram and scroll past hundreds, thousands of stunning women in seconds. So but when Jet launched Beauty of the Week, we didn't know what the baddies in Ohio looked like, or like what are the bad bitches in Louisiana? What do they like to do, right? Like now we do. We know too much. I just feel like the mystique of something like that is just gone at this point. There's no editor or team that's deciding who gets picked, who gets to be a part of something. The girls just post themselves. Everybody posts themselves. And that's why I think a very centralized feature like Beauty of the Week, it probably couldn't exist in the same way now. And I also think that in the year 2026, just conversations around like being objectified, conversations around body politics, conversations around colorism are just like much more relevant, which is a good thing, of course, but I just don't know, like a single magazine picking the beauty of the week, I just feel like that would immediately raise concerns about who's being centered, who's being left out, and why, and it would just be, I don't know. I just feel like it's not good for the times. Y'all get what I'm trying to say? I don't know. I don't know if it's good for the times. I feel like Jet Beauty of the Week really worked well because it filled a void, and it was a place where Black women could see themselves reflected. And now that mirror is just, it's in different places now. It's in so many different places. And of course, it can be in a couple more. But I do think, we just have more representation. We have more visibility. We have that now. And overall, when I think about Jet Beauty of the Week, what sticks with me the most, of course, there's the nostalgia there. It's the feeling of being at my grandma's house, and there's a new issue of Jet. There's a new issue of Essence. There's a new issue of Sister to Sister. And it's like, that's what I love to do. And that's how I fell in love really with media. So a lot of these publications, they mean a lot to me because this is like why I do what I do, being a kid and like loving to flip through the pages. So there's that aspect when I think about Jet Beauty of the Week, but it's also the fact that for decades we had this page, this feature that was just for us, like for us 100%. And I love that Jet is it's just been so well documented. There are so many copies of, I think I said this earlier in the episode, there are so many copies of Jet all over the place. A lot of them are still very affordable. A lot of them are available digitally on Google. We have McLemore's book now. And like I was saying about the whole story with LaMonte being able to shoot his daughter in her mother's outfit, this is why we have to invest further in physical media when we can, y'all. Like I could get on my soapbox about this and I don't want to bore y'all, but this is exactly why. I said this in the Blue Cantrell episode, like I need to do better. I still have like a ton of older magazines and books, but like I need to do better with making sure that I'm preserving things and like wanting to make sure that I get more, because it's just really beautiful that I was even able to look at issues of Jet from 1954. Like, just the fact that I was even able to access that made me very happy. And the fact that I could go from 1954 to 1984, then I'm looking at 2004, I'm looking at 2012, like I can really just hop around like that because it's all very well documented. And the fact that LaMonte McLemore, like I said, I'm going to post some of the pictures from his book on my Instagram. The fact that like he had this job for over 40 years and he has so many pictures. These are all outtakes, by the way, I believe, in his book. The fact that he has these still, like, y'all, preserve physical media when and where you can. That's all I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna leave y'all alone about it. So Jet magazine stopped printing in its original format around 1999, and then they started to test out different formats. They would go back to the original one here and there, I believe, but they would test out different formats, and then they had like less frequent issues afterwards. Overall, they stopped their print publication in 2014. The final weekly print issue of Jet went out on June 23rd, 2014. That last issue is called An American Icon, and it chronicles some of Jet's most iconic covers. It's on eBay for like $90 right now, I think. They did transition to a digital format. I don't think it's like still being updated, but they did do that, I think, for a couple of years. And then in 2016, both Jet and Ebony were sold to a private equity group and then sold again in 2020. Johnson Publishing filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So it is no more, at least not in the form that we know it as, but its impact did not disappear. In that AndScape interview I mentioned, Dalen Goff said, talking to 20 and 25-year-olds, I'm sometimes surprised that they are familiar with Jet. People never threw away Jet. They put them in boxes, and I'm sure there's a ton in someone's attic. You just had to hold on to them. There's a spark from the younger generation. For me, it's about igniting that spark. The great part about the next generation is that they also grew up with this computer in their pocket and can find and search for knowledge. So we need to ensure that our iconic brands remain for years. Exactly. End quote. Exactly. So the mirror that Jet held up to Black Beauty with the Beauty of the Week feature is very much alive, very much still alive. And I feel like you see it represented in what I do, telling these women's stories, posting their photos to Instagram. Shout out to everyone who does the same on Instagram, is just like preserving our culture, these magazines, these photos, like everything, and like telling the story behind it. I feel like that is the new version of what Beauty of the Week is, right? Like I said, I don't know if it would exist in its same format today. I don't know if any of the like features that we had back in the day could still exist in that format, but I feel like they have become digital, and we post ourselves, we tell the story ourselves. And not to get back on my soapbox about preserving physical media, I do want to add to that, preserve physical media of yourself. I am the friend that always takes pictures. I always am taking pictures. I told y'all I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I collect things in general, mostly clothes. Mostly clothes and shoes and bags, but I collect other things too. I still have a lot of photos and books and things like that. But take pictures of yourself, keep pictures of yourself, print pictures of yourself, hold on to them, okay? So that somebody will believe that you look this good in 20 years from now. But also for yourself, like we have to preserve stuff. And I would love to do more episodes like this, like some kind of like in print series, but it's really difficult because like I was saying, Jet is just so well preserved as far as like it's still being accessible, even over 10 years after it ended in the format that we know. So still being able to get to those pictures and like just read the magazine overall. I don't even know if I'd be able to do this for like other magazines that has similar features. I'd love to try. I'll try if y'all want it, but it's hard because it's like, dang, people don't be preserving like they used to. A lot of stuff is like not accessible online anymore. I know we talked about this last month, but it's a lot of stuff that's not really that accessible anymore, but I will try if y'all want it. Yeah, that is my episode on Jet Beauty of the week. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys have a great Valentine's Day and a great Black History Month. As always, you can find me on Instagram at The Vixen Memoirs. You can also find me at www.thevixenmemoirs.com. If you go to my website and you sign up, you will be on the mailing list for my newsletter that goes out every month. We had our January one go out, I think, 2 weeks ago. Mainly what I do is I just share books with you guys. I share music with you guys. I am going to build a playlist for that, so coming soon. Share my thoughts with you guys, and then also everyone who is on the mailing list for my newsletter receives free copies of all the books that we read in the now defunct Vixen Book Club. So you'll have access to those books like Bling by Erica Kennedy, Fly Girl, Omar Tyree, It's No Secret by Carmen Bryan. There's a lot of books there. Sign up for the newsletter. Follow on Instagram, interact, talk to me, I talk back, and I will see you guys next month. See y'all next month for another episode of Vixen. Bye.